It's 3 in the morning. Your baby stirs. You hold your breath, eyes fixed at the ceiling, praying they settle. Then the cry comes. You're up, across the room, picking them up before you've even fully woken yourself. You rock them, you feed them, you wait until they're completely still. You lower them into the crib like you're diffusing something. You make it to the door. Their eyes open. And you think you're doing everything right. But here's what's actually happening underneath that. Every time you rush in, you're not just comforting your baby. You're teaching their brain that sleep requires you. There's a Japanese principle that changes this completely. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to use it tonight. How many times last week did you feed your baby to sleep, only to have them wake the moment their back touched the mattress? How many times did you rock for 20 minutes, transfer them with the precision of a surgeon, and still hear that cry before you'd made it back to bed? How many nights have been broken into 2-hour fragments, not because something was wrong, but because your baby simply could not sleep without you in it? You're doing what every instinct tells you to do. You respond. You show up. You soothe. That's not failure. That's love. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you rush in the moment your baby stirs, you are interrupting a process their brain is actively trying to complete on its own. Every feed to sleep, every rock to sleep, every emergency at 2 in the morning, you're not solving the sleep problem. You're becoming the sleep solution. And the moment you're not there, the entire thing falls apart. Here's why. Babies are not born knowing the difference between night and day. That knowledge has to be built, literally wired into their developing brain. And the patterns you repeat, the signals you send, the environment you create, those are the materials their nervous system uses to build it. If those materials consistently say that sleep requires external help, that is exactly what their brain learns. And you will find yourself rocking a toddler at midnight wondering how you got there. So before we talk about what to do differently, you need to understand what is actually happening inside your baby's brain at night, because once you see it, everything changes. Here is something most parents don't know about infant sleep. Adult sleep moves in relatively long, stable cycles. Baby sleep does not. Your baby cycles through light and deep sleep roughly every 45 to 50 minutes. And at the end of each cycle, they surface into what researchers call a partial arousal, a brief window of near wakefulness, somewhere between asleep and fully conscious. Most adults pass through this moment without ever noticing. Babies don't, not yet. And here is the part that changes everything. The goal is not to stop your baby from reaching that moment. They will reach it every single night, multiple times, for months. The goal is to teach their brain to pass through it and return to sleep on its own. Researchers call this self-settling, and it is not a personality trait. It is not something some babies are born with and others aren't. It is a skill, a learned neurological pattern. And like every skill, it has to be practiced. But here's where most parents accidentally make it impossible. A baby who falls asleep in your arms will expect to wake up in your arms. Their brain registers the conditions at the moment of falling asleep, and when that partial arousal comes 45 minutes later, it checks. Are those conditions still present? When they aren't, the arousal becomes a full waking. Not because your baby is hungry, not because anything is wrong, because the environment their brain was expecting has disappeared. You were the condition, and you're gone. Now layer on top of this something even more fundamental. Newborns have no circadian rhythm. None. The internal biological clock that tells your body when to sleep and when to wake does not exist yet at birth. It has to be built. And it is built by the outside world. Light exposure, sound patterns, feeding sequences, temperature, the consistent signals your baby receives across every single day and night. Those are the inputs their developing brain uses to calibrate the difference between daytime and nighttime. Without consistent signals, the clock stays confused. And a confused clock means fragmented, unpredictable sleep at every hour. This is not a discipline problem. It is not a willpower problem. It is not a reflection of your parenting. It is an architecture problem. Your baby's brain is waiting to be given a structure it can internalize, a set of reliable patterns it can use to regulate itself. And Japanese parents figured out, long before the sleep research confirmed it, exactly how to build that structure in a way that works with the brain rather than against it. Which brings us to the principle. And it is simpler than you might expect. Japan has one of the lowest rates of chronic infant sleep problems in the developed world. Not because Japanese babies are neurologically different, not because Japanese parents have more patience, more time, or fewer pressures. Because they build the sleep environment around a principle that most Western parents have never heard of. It is called Ma. Ma is written with two characters, the character for gate and the character for the sun shining through it. The image it creates is deliberate, not absence, not darkness. Light, moving through an open space. In Japanese philosophy, Ma is the concept of the meaningful pause, the intentional space between action and response, the moment you hold rather than fill. In Japanese parenting, Ma is applied to sleep from the very beginning. When a baby stirs in the night, the Japanese parent does not immediately respond. They wait. They observe. They give the baby's nervous system the space to complete what it is already trying to do. Not because they don't care, because they understand that the attempt itself is the lesson. Now, before you stop me, this is not crying it out. This is not the extinction method. This is not leaving your baby alone in the dark to figure things out through distress. Ma is not absence. It is watchful, present stillness. The parent is there. They are aware. They are close. They are simply choosing not to intervene before their baby has had the chance to try. And here is what is happening in your baby's brain during that pause. When a baby surfaces into that partial arousal at the end of a sleep cycle, their brain does something very specific. It scans the environment. It checks for consistency. Are the conditions the same as when I fell asleep? Is the sound familiar? Is the light the same? Is the temperature unchanged? If the answer is yes, the brain receives a single, quiet signal. Safe, familiar, continue. And the baby bridges back into the next sleep cycle without ever fully waking. No intervention needed. No feeding, no rocking, no parent in the room. But when a parent rushes in during that scan, something different happens. A new stimulus enters the environment. A voice, a touch, movement, light. The brain registers the change, the arousal completes, and now the baby is fully awake. And now they need that new stimulus, your presence, your warmth, your response, to return to sleep. You didn't comfort your baby out of wakefulness. You became the condition for the next sleep cycle. And every cycle after that. Think about it this way. You cannot build self-regulation by regulating for your child. That's what the research on older children shows consistently. And the same principle applies here, earlier than most parents realize. You cannot build self-settling by settling for your baby. Their brain has to practice it. It has to experience the attempt, complete the bridge, and encode that pattern. Ma is the space in which that practice happens. But Ma does not work in isolation. It only works when everything surrounding it has been built with consistency. And that foundation is where most parents, through no fault of their own, miss the starting point entirely. Before Ma can work, the day has to be built correctly. And it starts with a sequence so simple it seems too obvious to matter. Eat, play, sleep. In that order. Every wake window from the earliest weeks of life. Here is why the order matters more than most parents realize. When your baby wakes from a nap, they are at their most alert. That is the moment to feed them. Not because it is convenient, but because they are awake enough to feed fully, to take in a complete meal rather than dozing off halfway through. A baby who feeds well at the start of a wake window is a baby who goes down at the end of it without hunger pulling them back up. After a full feed comes play, interaction, movement, light, sound, all the stimulation that burns through the wake window naturally. And then, at the end of that window, when the tiredness is real and the body is ready, sleep. Not forced, not engineered, just the natural result of a sequence the brain has started to recognize and expect. Now here's the piece that trips most parents up. Feed to sleep. It is one of the most common habits parents accidentally build, and one of the most persistent to undo. When a baby falls asleep while feeding, their brain fuses the two experiences together. Eating becomes the cue for sleep, and sleep becomes unreachable without it. Every nap, every night, the baby needs the breast or the bottle to make the transition. Disentangling that association once it is formed takes weeks of consistent effort. Not building it in the first place takes a single, deliberate choice. Feed at the start of the wake window, not at the end of it. Wake windows give you the timing. From birth to 12 weeks, your baby can comfortably handle 45 minutes to an hour and a half of wakefulness between sleep periods. After 4 months, that window stretches to closer to 2 hours. These are not rigid rules. They are your guide for reading your baby's rhythm, for knowing when their brain is approaching the edge of its capacity and needs to be brought down before it tips into overtiredness. An overtired baby does not fall asleep more easily. They fall asleep harder, fight longer, and wake sooner. The goal is simple. Put your baby down sleepy, but not fully asleep, at the natural end of a wake window, fed well and played with. That is the condition in which Ma becomes possible. That is the foundation the pause is built on. But even with the right timing and the right sequence, there is one more layer that makes or breaks everything. And it requires almost no effort to get right. Your baby's brain is not waiting for you to put it to sleep. It is waiting for the right signals. And those signals come from the environment you build around every single sleep period, consistently, day after day, until the brain stops asking questions and simply responds. Light is the most powerful tool you have. During the day, lights on, curtains open. Natural light is the primary input that sets and resets the circadian clock. It tells the brain, this is daytime, this is wakefulness, this is when the world is active. And at night, you reverse it completely. An hour before sleep, dim everything down. If your baby needs a night feed, use the lowest light possible. A soft nightlight is enough to see by. Turning on a bright overhead light at 2 in the morning sends a signal your baby's brain cannot ignore. It reads as morning, and you will pay for it for the next hour. Sound works differently than most parents expect. Silence is not a gift to your newborn. It is actually unfamiliar to them. Your baby spent 9 months inside a body that was constantly, relentlessly loud. Your heartbeat, your digestion, your voice, the muffled sounds of the outside world pressing in. Silence is the new environment. Noise is the one they came from. White noise recreates that familiar soundscape. Rain, ocean, a steady, low hum. It signals, this is known, this is safe, this is where sleep happens. It also creates a consistent audio layer that absorbs sudden sounds before they reach your baby's nervous system. And that matters because of the Moro reflex. When a baby is startled, their arms fling wide, their back arches, and if they were on the edge of sleep, they are no longer there. Swaddling contains that movement. It replicates the snug, bounded feeling of the womb and stops the reflex from completing. A swaddled baby who startles does not fully wake. The reflex fires, the body moves, and then settles. The sleep continues. You are not controlling your baby's sleep. You are designing the environment their brain uses to regulate itself. Light, sound, temperature, containment. Get the architecture right, and the brain does the rest. But there is one thing most parents do, right at the moment it matters most, that undoes all of it. Your baby stirs at 2 in the morning. Not a cry, a murmur, A small sound, a shift, a brief vocalization that lasts maybe 10 seconds. And in most homes, the parent is up, across the room, and picking up the baby within 30 seconds of that first sound. Every time, without waiting to see what happens next. And every time they do, they reset the clock. That murmur is your baby's brain at the edge of a sleep cycle. It is the sound of the partial arousal, the moment where their nervous system is scanning the environment and deciding whether to bridge into the next cycle or surface into full wakefulness. In most cases, given a few minutes and a consistent environment, that brain will make the bridge on its own. But the moment you walk in, the scan is over. A new stimulus has arrived. The decision has been made for them. This is Ma in practice. You hear the stir, you wait. Not because you don't care, but because you understand what is actually happening. You give it 2 minutes, then 5. You listen for the quality of the sound, whether it is escalating or settling, whether it carries urgency, or whether it is simply the noise of a brain doing its work. And in the majority of cases, for a baby who is not hungry, not sick, not in pain, the sound fades. The bridge completes. The room goes quiet again. That quiet is your baby's brain learning something it will use for the rest of its life. Now, knowing when to wait and when to respond is not something you will get perfect immediately. And it does not need to be perfect. A hungry cry sounds different from a settling murmur. The cry of a baby in discomfort has a different quality, a different rhythm than the sounds of a normal sleep transition. You will learn to hear the difference faster than you think. Within days, most parents can tell. Ma is not about ignoring your baby's needs. It is about accurately reading what those needs actually are, rather than responding to the first sound out of reflex. The first night you practice the pause, nothing dramatic happens. The second night, slightly less intervention. By the end of the first week of consistent practice, most parents notice a measurable shift. Not because their baby changed overnight, but because their baby's brain was finally given the space to practice what it was already trying to do. The partial arousals are still happening, the cycles are still the same, but the brain is now bridging them, quietly, in the dark, without needing you to be part of the process. That is the compound effect of Ma. Small, consistent pauses that build a skill the brain carries forward. Now I know there are things you are thinking right now. Things that feel like real obstacles, not just hesitation. And I want to address them directly before we close, because they are the ones that stop most parents from ever starting. The first objection is the one that feels the most like a moral argument. Waiting feels cruel. My baby needs me. And you are right, your baby needs you. But there is a difference between being present and being the solution to every moment of discomfort. Those are not the same thing, and treating them as if they are is exactly what creates the problem you are trying to solve. The parent who practices Ma is not absent. They are close. They are listening. They are aware of every sound coming from that room. They are simply not walking in before their baby has had the chance to try. That is not neglect. That is trust. And trust, extended gradually and consistently, is one of the most important things a developing nervous system can receive. It builds the foundation for a child who believes, at a neurological level, that they are capable, that they can handle what arises, that the world does not require constant external rescue to be navigable. You are not withholding comfort. You are building capacity. The second objection is the one that sounds reasonable. Every baby is different. This might not work for mine. And you are correct that every baby has a different temperament, a different feeding pattern, a different pace of development. Some babies will begin self-settling within a few nights. Others will take several weeks. The timeline is not the point. What does not vary is the underlying biology. Every baby has a Moro reflex. Every baby develops a circadian rhythm through environmental cues. Every baby forms sleep associations based on the conditions they fall asleep in. Every baby cycles through partial arousals and has the neurological capacity to bridge them. The brain science is consistent. Your application of these principles will need to flex around your baby's specific rhythm and temperament, but the direction does not change. You are not gambling on a method that might not suit your child. You are working with how every human brain learns to sleep. The third objection is the truest one. I am too exhausted to build new habits right now. I hear that, and I am not going to tell you it isn't hard. It is. The first week of establishing an eat, play, sleep rhythm, building a consistent sleep environment, and practicing the pause is genuinely demanding because, in most cases, you are working against patterns that are already in place. The feed to sleep association is already there. The rush-in reflex is already automatic. Changing that takes effort at the precise moment when effort feels impossible. But here is the honest calculation. The cost of starting is 1 difficult week. The cost of not starting is months more of 4 times a night wakings, accumulated sleep deprivation, and a pattern that becomes harder to shift the longer it runs. You are not being asked to do something on top of your exhaustion. You are being asked to do something that ends it.